not technology. Okay, I guess we're back. I apologize for the audio issues there. For those of you that were watching online, you may not have heard all of that. Our second scripture lesson this morning comes from 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 10 and 11. Like good stewards of the manifold grace of God, serve one another with whatever gifts each of you has received. Whoever speaks must do so as one speaking the very words of God. Whoever serves must do so with the strength that God supplies, so that God may be glorified in all things through Jesus Christ. To him belong the glory and the power forever and ever. So I want to spend some time this morning talking about something that I talked about last Sunday. Last week, as I talked about how Peter and Saul, who later changed his name to Paul, how they each received a call from Jesus to carry on Jesus' work in the world. I said that we too are called by God to minister to those around us. I want to read an item that appeared in the UCC Still Speaking devotional this week. It's written by the Reverend Liz Miller, who serves as the pastor of Edgewood United Church in East Lansing, Michigan. Reverend Miller writes, "We tell stories of political prophets as if receiving a call from God is reserved for an elite squad of ancient rabble-rousers. Surely our own lives have stories of being called to specific purposes, quietly shaped by the Holy Spirit. What of the young boy who loved trees and couldn't be dissuaded to stay out of them, even after he climbed so high, the fire department had to bring him down? Was that not the seed of his call to environmental advocacy, founding his own church's Green Team, and now serving on the UCC's Council for Climate Justice? And what of the middle-aged woman who remembers that within an hour of her husband's untimely death, friends were on her doorstep, holding vigil through the grief, filling her freezer with food, and slowly bringing her back to life? Was that not the foundation of her call to be that person for others? The one always arriving with a casserole, checking in long after everyone else stopped showing up. What of the recent retiree who left a corporate career to focus on volunteering for social justice causes, but found herself volunteering to write policy and to lead restructuring processes for small organizations? Were the skills she acquired over 30 years in the workplace not woven into an emerging call to serve in new ways? God told many biblical prophets to stand up and listen. Perhaps I will hear God's voice if I lean in and remember what formed me, if I pay attention to my gifts and skills, if I understand calling a lifetime of listening and acting. And I can add my own story to this list. I did not anticipate retiring from a life in the transportation industry with an intention of helping start and then lead a new UCC congregation in a small conservative town. but my experience in leading others and public speaking have proved to be very beneficial to that effort. So 1 Corinthians 12, the first passage I read, that witnesses to the scope and the variety of divine giftedness. God is a generous gift giver. God ensures that every person is gifted in some way. No one can say, I have nothing to add to that community. Nor can anyone claim to be useless in the church, in the home, or in the nation. Even the least of these makes a difference. The humblest member, perhaps even those we might wish to exclude for political or ideological reasons, the humblest member is essential to the well-being of the whole organization. God's giftedness and our vocational identities can be understood in terms of a number of spiritual affirmations that can be claimed by everyone in communities of faith everywhere. If we wish to speak of divine creativity as universal, then each person is given a manifestation of God's Spirit, some form of God's Spirit. Each person has gifts for the common good, not individual glory. Each person has gifts to be prized, and none is inferior. And each person has gifts that are vocational in nature. Our gifts define our calling. The church is intended to be a laboratory for vocation and for giftedness. In non-coercive ways, the congregation is called to help people discover God's vision or visions for their lives and embody them in the service to the world. Our gifts and vocations are contextual in nature. They emerge and they flourish in time, oriented toward real people and real situations. This is the good news that challenges us to stay awake to God's particular vocational vision for each of us. Life can be very exciting when we realize that each moment is filled with a possibility and that God is at work inviting us to be partners in divine creativity and wholeness at any moment on any day. Hopefully, the readings I read today and our discussion will inspire each of us to explore her or his gifts over the course of a lifetime, as well as in each individual moment by moment. Maybe beyond individual giftedness, we also need to explore the particular gifts of a congregation in its community setting, as well as God's call to congregation on a week-by-week basis to gather for worship. So with all of that in mind, I want to continue this morning with some discussion about our God-given gifts and talents. And the first question I want to start with is, can you be a Christian all by yourself? Anybody?
Why can't
You can be? Okay. And can you say more about that, Mike? What are you thinking?
Well, I'm sure what you're getting at is Jesus said that when there's more than two of us gathered, that's the church. But can't you, even if you don't go to church, why can't you be a Christian? Why can't you do it by yourself? I don't understand.
Good point. Others?
You can believe and you can try to live your life to follow Christ. And maybe by definition that means you're a Christian. So, but I do believe that it's much more, it's better in community in that you can do more, you can learn more about Christ's teachings. Not that you can't study it on your own, because you can. I just feel it's better to do it in community.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I get more out of it. Whether I am or, as an individual, so be it. That's fine too. But as a community, I think I get more out of it when I talk to somebody else about why I believe what I believe or think the way I think. And I've said this many times, whether it's been in a Bible study or anything else, of sometimes just listening to somebody else talk about the way they think and the way they believe makes me think about what I believe in a different way. And it doesn't mean I change the way I think. It just might mean it makes my conviction stronger of why I think the way I think and I believe what I believe. Or sometimes it does make me go, I never thought of it that way. I wonder if I should think about that more, so regardless of what it does, I think it makes me think more. Because somebody else's viewpoint gives me another reference point. Because in every situation, I only see from my vantage point.
I think all three of you were correct. I don't think that's an either or question. I think that's a both and. And I guess one of the things I would think of would be is in community, you can play off the gifts of others. You can, combine those gifts. But yet individual efforts are important, I think, as well. To have that faith in yourself, not necessarily relying on that. Jacob, would that be any different than trying to be a one-person Boy Scout troop? Would that work?
No, it wouldn't work.
Oh, but it might.
No.
I mean, I've heard about a lot of things that you and your brother have done, individual things.
Did you do all of the activities?
No. No.
By yourself?
Because the part with Boy Scout is you're helping the community
Mhm.
as a troop. Without that troop, it's not really Boy Scouts.
It's Jacob Scouts.
It's just yourself.
Yeah.
Doing good.
But that's not necessarily bad.
No, it's not.
Like, the fact that one person is a Christian and professes that faith, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if I'm understanding what you're saying is it's magnified by being in that community, that troop.
Because you can do everything you want to do in Boy Scouts by yourself.
Okay.
It's just that piece of being with the troop and community that you're helping with that really excels that experience and gets you to do it more frequently, better, and you can even do more with more people.
Mhm.
And I would share, because there are people that are watching live and commenting online here, they said, I believe you can be a Christian by yourself. However, being with a community helps or assists you to live the Christian life.
Maybe to live more fully even by doing that. I guess I would see that it would start with your individual effort and hopefully then be amplified. Well, and in the reading that I did from 1 Corinthians this morning, chapter 12, verse 4 says, there are different kinds of gifts. And maybe we look at that as diversity, but of the same Spirit, which would lean to unity, working together. And in verse 5, Paul says, there are different kinds of service. Again, that diversity, but the same Lord, which leans back to that unity type of thing. So if we look at our gifts that way, are all gifts from God the same?
No.
How are they different?
Well, we all have different, I guess I equate that with talents, and we have different talents. You know, talents are, I believe, are a gift. You know, I can play keyboard. I know music. Others cannot. Now, others can paint a painting. I can barely draw a stick figure. Okay? So,
I can relate.
yeah, you know, I have a friend who's very extroverted, can talk to people, engage people. And I always marvel at that because I'm an introvert and I don't have that skill. So, yeah, we all have different skills or talents. It's how we're wonderfully made, is we have those unique things. And I think that's one of the strengths to coming together with other Christians, is we can utilize each other's talents and work together.
I would agree, and it kind of reminds me, as I look at our quilt that we have, like on here in our altar. Each element of that quilt is very pretty. It's a very bright white. There's a very detailed cross, in the inside that's very pretty and has its own unique piece. And then there's all of these layers out, right? And each element is very pretty. And so that's like each of us individually having a talent. But when you look at that as a whole quilt, it's a completely different than if you just had a sheet that was that middle cross piece or the edging, right? It's the combining of it all that makes it such a beautiful picture and a beautiful quilt.
Yeah.
But each one of them is very special and draws your attention. But
Again, that concept of both and rather than either or, like you say, each element maybe could stand alone, each part of it.
Yeah.
Much like Sharon said, for example, her keyboard playing, she could do that by herself and frequently does at home, I know, but to do it with other folks adds to that.
when she has all of us lovely singers to sing along with.
Absolutely. Yeah, okay.
It also kind of puts, if you even think of it, like I was thinking, we kind of centralized on Christians, but all other religions around us and society is like, it's all part that helps me to broaden my perspective, as well as we're all part of the whole. Society in general is part of the whole. And I was really focusing in on what you were saying about cutting off a foot or an eye or something like that. And it's like, we're all part of the same thing. And really we need those skills. Like they challenge us to grow in different ways. Like right now I'm thinking about some stuff that I do for work. Like I do training and helping and stuff like that. But 5 years ago, I would have never done it. Like, I've grown and I've learned from the people around me, so it's caused me to increase that skill. Maybe it's not gonna ever be my passion, it's certainly, but I'm better at it. And I think that each one of us has those talents that might help somebody else increase or play off of. Like, yes, I'm never gonna be the bubbly person that's gonna go introduce myself to 40 people, but I can see how it's not as scary when I watch somebody else do it. And then as well as gives me a little bit more courage.
Along that line, do you think we sometimes have gifts or strong points that others can see in us more readily than we can see in ourselves? Is that possible? Can somebody else read us better?
Sometimes I would say that, because I think there's a lot of times, maybe the things that I have as a talent I might take for granted. And that's just because it's so ingrained in who I am, that, I don't even notice it anymore.
Sometimes we overlook our own abilities, if you will, our skills.
Yep.
Like you say, take them for granted.
Yep.
Is there an advantage in somebody else seeing some of those things in us? Or is it a detriment?
Depends on what you're talking about, which skill you're talking about. So say you're a leader like I am, and you don't see yourself as great of a leader as you could be, but somebody sees you as that great leader. It's like the new scouts that are coming into Boy Scouts, they see me because I'm up there doing it, like everything for our troop, leading it, making sure everything's going right. They look up to me as that leader. And like me, I don't really see myself as that great leader, but to those scouts, it's very different.
I wonder there, Jake, if you're kind of saying too, for those scouts that are gonna be coming in, they see you leading, so they make it like where would it be bad? What if they don't step up because they see you doing a good job and they're intimidated by it, right? I could see that in a church setting. Oh, well, let's take the music and the singing. Yes, I'll sing, but I'm intimidated by it because I know there's others here that sing way better than me. So not that it's a competition, but if you're really good at something, I think there's this expectation, people are gonna be like, well, oh, you're gonna do that, and I better not go near the singing part because that's not my skill set, right? So it can, maybe it stops me then from building that talent.
I think also, yes, I could see that. Like for me, like I do finances. I can do them really well, but I have no passion for it. I really would rather do something completely different. But if somebody sees me doing that and doing a good job, they may choose to never oh yes, you can keep doing them forever. No, I really don't want to.
Well, but like the example Jacob gave, is it important then for us maybe to recognize that and to help teach others, whether it's somebody coming up that would eventually, like in your case, you will graduate out of scouting, and at least for a time anyway, and others will have to take your place as that leader. So I think that's important for us too, if we can, while somebody else is recognizing a skill in us, maybe we can look backwards, if you will, to see that, hey, that one guy in particular, he looks like he could maybe be a good future leader, that sort of thing. would it be any different than one of our young people here? Where they, seem to develop an affinity for not only for leading, but for spirituality. Could they, potentially one of our young people become a minister? Could we see that and encourage that as well? I don't know that it's bad. I think it's important that all of the gifts get recognized. Well, then, why, when we look particularly at media, why does the star of the sporting team tend to get all the headlines? Why does the movie star get all the attention in television or movie? How many of the rest of you guys never stick around to watch the credits roll by at the end of a movie where it recognizes what everybody contributed? I know I don't.
Depends on the movie.
Oh,
Now, if it's a Marvel movie, yes.
Because there's a scene at the end.
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah, ulterior motive here.
Yeah, there you go. Well, but if that's the case, then like I said, you get the star athlete that tends to grab the headlines on the sporting team, or that movie star. Does that mean that some of the gifts that people have are more important or less important than others?
No, because when I think about a movie trailer, it's pretty amazing how many names there are listed, how many people it took to make that all come together and happen. Yes, as a society, we focus on the quote unquote star, that played the lead, but it took a lot of other people to make that happen, to elevate that star to that status that they're noticed and talked about in the media. Does that make any of the rest of them less talented or less gifted? No, I don't think it does. I just think it's just kind of how media works and how our society, it's easier to focus on the one than the fact that there were many. And so that's what we kind of do. We focus on, Tom Hanks or whoever it is, because it's hard to wrap your head around the fact that there were 100 other people that worked on that movie to make it happen. And in sports, there's that one play that, he won the game. Well, yeah, maybe I'll use hockey because I watch hockey. Yeah, maybe that last goal, okay, that was the go-ahead goal. It won the game for them. Kaprizov scored that goal. And he's a very talented player, but he's not one person on the ice. There's 5 other players on the ice when you play hockey, and they all have to work together to make it happen. You can have a guy with that kind of talent on a team of, if he played with a team of bantams, they'd get crushed, right? It still takes the rest of the team to support and help make that happen. But as a society, and as media, it's just easier to focus on the one person.
Yeah, I think of, like many of the service projects that we've done. It takes all of us to do it. There's not one thing or one person that makes that happen.
Yep.
It's, okay, who's coordinating, who's driving, who's coordinating the carpool, who's coordinating picking up the supplies, who's planning the pre stuff, who's planning the post stuff, who's, it's all of it to make it be what it really is. It's not just one. Say cleaning the ditches, right? One of us could go out there and do that. One of us could go out there and do that for sure. But it's far more rewarding when there's the group of us that go out there, we partner up and we take the time and we know we're doing it with each other, you know, it makes a difference, so. Again, if I may, one of our viewers online here, I'll share. From the book Who Moved My Cheese, and says, whatever parts of us we choose to use, we all share something in common. They need to find our way in the maze and succeed in changing times. And I feel we need to share our gifts and talents in order to strengthen each other. And that's true, that strengthen each other is an important part.
Yeah, because if I had to do the road ditches by myself, I'd be exhausted.
And it would
That's a
take
lot of work.
far,
And it would
far
Take
longer.
days.
And it would take days,
It would feel like a chore versus
Yes.
very much.
a service, a reward.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and, you know, even going back to that sports team analogy, okay, any of the athletes, and it doesn't matter what sport, especially on a professional level, these teams have got people like equipment managers. So, you know, again, to use Sharon's analogy of a hockey team, what happens when one of those star players breaks a skate? Now who's scrambling and who's so important to get that star back into the game? But that equipment manager, who, if you ask me, even for the teams here in Minnesota, I couldn't name a single equipment manager. I'll bet nobody here could. But how important are they? You know, a lot of people would look at, you know, that's a real menial job. But is it?
I was, you know, kind of put into context a little bit, like I sew, and many of you have seen some of the things I sew. I critique myself when I'm sewing and thinking that it looks awful or looks less than what it could be, but other people see it completely different. The other thing that I can do that individually, I can do that by myself, but there's a piece, like, for example, I want to set up an Etsy site or marketing or something like that. Those skills are not my natural inclination, natural set, so I put off. Whereas if you had another person that had a complementary skill that's different than yours, you can move that needle so much faster than trying to do it all yourself.
Like the ditch cleaning. You could get it done by yourself, but how long would it take? How much extra energy would it take? And how would you feel when you're done? Kind of thing. Well, there's an interesting book that I think is one of the most influential ones of all times, and based on how long it's been on bestseller lists. And I would recommend it, especially to our young people. The book is called What Color Is Your Parachute? Some of you may have heard of it. It's by an author named Richard Bolles. Bolles was actually a minister. And before he wrote this book, he was just kind of going through the motions. He was leading a church. He was doing what he needed to do. But suddenly he felt called to write this book. And the gist of What Color Is Your Parachute is it's about finding God's true calling for your life. And out of that book, there are three main takeaways from that book. The first is to find your mission here on earth. Find that passion. Second, do what you can, whether it's day by day, step by step, moment by moment, to make the world a better place. And finally, to discover and then begin to use your talent or your passion that you came to earth to use, that you were created to use. It's a really interesting book, like I said, particularly for young people who are maybe trying to find their place in or their direction in life. It's a good way to look at that. So I want to close this morning with another story that I heard about that really hit home for me about gifts, and particularly what we were just talking about here at the end, how important or non-important some gifts and jobs may be. So the story goes, a recent 100-year anniversary for a church drew folks from all over to a large mainline church. One person, a minister who had been there for 25 years, stood up and said, I owe my earliest sense of God's calling to Kay. Thank you, Kay. Well, as the service went on, before it got done, there were 5 other people that stood up. All of them were currently serving churches as professional clergy, professional ministers, and they too expressed their gratitude to Kay. The folks in this celebration are kind of looking around going, who's Kay? Nobody really knew. They had never had a Kay as a minister, not even as an associate pastor or a youth worker, youth leader. Who's Kay? Well, finally, Kay stood up, and everybody in the place knew what that was all about. For you see, it seems that Kay had been stuck back in the church nursery for 55 years. Every Sunday, as everyone went to their classes, as ministers came and went, Kay had tended and prayed to these babies and offered them to God. No one had to beg her to volunteer. It was her passion. It was her life breath. It was her mission in life. So, Kay, the story ends. I want to say to you, mission accomplished. Thank you. So, as we go out this week and beyond, I'll ask each of you, what gift can you bring to make this church, the wider church, and the world a little better place because you are journeying through life with that passion? Thanks everybody for coming, and thank you for contributing to our discussion this morning.
Thank you.